So in this video, I'm going to share 10 things that can cause poor bile flow, or can cause the bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, or can create what we hear about with gallbladder sludge or bile sludge. So if you don't know how your bile flow is doing, check out our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow, and we'll put the link to that video in the description below. But if you've already been told, oh, you have gallbladder sludge, or you have biliary sludge, and your stuff is just kind of gooked up in your gallbladder and not really flowing, you got to know that that's the step before gallstones and gallbladder attacks. And I'm going to let you know, if you haven't had a gallbladder attack, you really don't want to have a gallbladder attack. You really want to put correcting this at the top of your to-do list. Don't worry about the lawn. You really want to work on this. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
At the end of this video, we'll point you to our video for 5 steps to improve bile flow and help you thin that out. But for a lot of folks, you really got to stop doing what's wrong and correct problems that are creating the issue in the first place. So a lot of people are like, how did my bile flow get so bad? And so I want to make this video to kind of help you understand these 10 different things that can really be problematic for bile flow. And when you're thinking about this, you want to understand that the gallbladder's job is to store and concentrate that bile that is made by the liver. And so the gallbladder is going to concentrate that bile so that a small amount of bile becomes more effective for all the things that that bile needs to do. So what we need to understand when bile is becoming too sludgy and that gallbladder is getting all sludged up, that this happens because it's not flowing correctly. And that means there's going to be some things that we talk about that can thicken up that bile so it doesn't flow correctly. But also, if that bile is not being called upon, it will continue to sit in the gallbladder, and then the gallbladder doesn't have an off switch for its concentrating moves that it does. It's just going to continue to concentrate that bile until it concentrates into sludge, and then it'll continue to concentrate it until it concentrates into stones. And if you want to understand how a gallbladder attack happens, we'll put a link in the description below for our video on understanding gallbladder attacks, so you can help understand what you might need to do to avoid that situation happening. But let's look at these things that can cause the sludge or the poor bile flow in the first place. And number one is high estrogen and other stress hormones like cortisol. And estrogen can go high for a wide variety of reasons. Maybe somebody's taking birth control that raises estrogen. Maybe somebody's even on estrogen therapy. Like all the cool kids are doing estrogen therapy right now because raising estrogen levels can really improve a lot of symptoms. It gives the body these tools that it can use, and that can relieve a lot of symptoms. So everybody's like, let's just pile in the estrogen. The problem is higher estrogen will thicken up the bile so that it doesn't flow correctly. So we really want to take steps to make sure that estrogen is not going too high. And that means that we need to reduce the stress in our life, because stress in our life can raise estrogen and other stress hormones, but also stress in the body. So maybe the body's dealing with some type of infection or digestive overgrowth, or maybe there's just not enough resources in the body for the body to function the way that it wants to function. So one thing you can do is you can just look at your blood pressure at least 2 hours after a meal, but not first thing in the morning. It shouldn't be fasted. It should be after a meal. And if that systolic number is lower than 112, that's a really strong indication that there's not enough minerals and nutrients in the system for the body to function the way that it wants to function. So when that's the case, it'll raise these stress hormones just to help things out. So if your body is raising these stress hormones all the time, it can thicken up that bile. Another stress that can happen is people fasting when they really shouldn't be fasting, when their body is not set up to fasting. A lot of people are fasting today. It's very popular. A lot of people see great results with fasting. I use fasting myself. I use it with my clients. But when the body's not set up to succeed on fasting, it's going to stress the body out and raise those stress hormones. To understand that better, check out our video on different people that should not use intermittent fasting, and we'll put the link in the description below. But another problem is people that are using prolonged fasting. They're trying to like, hey, I'm going to eat on Easter. That's what I'm going to eat next. And they're doing these longer fasts that are longer than just, hey, I'm going to skip breakfast. They're going days and days and even longer. And what happens is, when we eat food is when the gallbladder squirts this bile down to meet the acids that leave the stomach. that's when the gallbladder squirts it down. So if we're not eating food, then the gallbladder is not being called on and the bile is not being squirted down. So the bile is going to sit in the gallbladder and continue to concentrate until it's sludge or stones. So I understand all the benefits that come from fasting, and sure, there are supplements that you can take to thin bile while you're fasting, but those supplements would break your fast. So then your fast is really not going to work the way that it's supposed to work. So I like to use intermittent fasting, but I don't like to show off with my fasting because of the trouble that it can create. Okay, cause number 2 is eating too many estrogenic foods. So people are eating all this soy and stuff because they hear all these bad things about meat. So they're like, oh, I'm just going to eat all these Frankenburger things that are made out of vegetable products that really have ingredients that are closer to Tupperware than actual food. And they're eating all this soy-based stuff that's estrogenic and can make the body feel like estrogen is going high enough to create similar problems. So I really like to see people avoid those soy-type estrogenic foods. Number 3 is consuming too many grains or processed foods. Both grains and processed foods tend to have the ability to thicken up the bile, and that's what most people are eating today. Most of our food supply is just this processed junk. So you really want to start leaning more towards eating real food. Cause number 4 is low stomach acid. So the stomach acid is meant to happen in the stomach to help us acidify and break down our food. And then that acidic product leaves the stomach, and that's when the gallbladder squirts that alkaline bile down to help us neutralize those acids and really help us bust that food apart and get all the nutrients out of that food. But for a wide variety of reasons, somebody won't be making enough stomach acid and then the food's not getting acidified properly. So the gallbladder says, oh, I don't need to put as much bile down there because it's not a very acidic product leaving that stomach. It doesn't need as much bile to help neutralize it. So then if not as much bile is flowing, it will stay in the gallbladder and get concentrated and sludgy. If a person's using PPIs for acid reflux, or maybe they're using antacids, that's going to turn off stomach acid. Or a person maybe doesn't have enough resources for the body to make enough stomach acid. It can happen for a wide variety of reasons. Maybe a person gets like some kind of stomach bug or food poisoning that can neutralize the acids, and then the person can't break down their food and get enough minerals out of the food to make stomach acid. So this can create a circle that can create a lot of problems. And by the way, if a person's bile isn't flowing correctly, it can result in low stomach acid because now the body can't access the minerals from the food that it's eating to get the minerals it needs to make stomach acid. So either side of digestion can really cause trouble for the other side. So if you need to better understand what's going on with your digestion, chapters 3 and 4 of my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, will walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion aren't working and then what steps will help correct those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free, and that'll walk you through that process. Cause number 5 can be a low-fat diet. So the same way that the body calls on that gallbladder to squirt bile down when acid is leaving the stomach, it also asks that gallbladder to squirt bile down when we consume dietary fats. Bile is what helps us emulsify or break down our dietary fats. So if somebody goes on a low-fat diet and they're not really bringing in many dietary fats, then the gallbladder is not going to squirt as much bile down to help emulsify those fats. So more bile is going to stay in the gallbladder and get sludgy. Which takes us to the next cause, which can be a vegan or vegetarian diet. And these diets don't have to be horrible, but a lot of vegan and vegetarian diets end up being lower in fat, which is going to create the problem that we just talked about, as well as including more estrogenic foods like soy-based proteins. So that can be a problem if you're doing that diet the wrong way. Cause number 7 is what we call a catabolic imbalance. So it was Dr. Emmanuel Rivisi who helped us understand that the body has a natural circadian rhythm at the cellular level. So we're meant to be in this catabolic state during the day where the body is very good at creating energy and breaking down tissues so they can be rebuilt. And then at night, we should move into an anabolic state where the body is very good at sleeping and then rebuilding and repairing things. But the problem is that some people can get stuck in one of these states most of the time. And if someone is stuck in this catabolic state most of the time, it tends to thicken up that bile so that it doesn't flow as well. So if you need to understand if this is an issue for you, we'll put a link in the description below for our video on is your circadian rhythm off, and that'll walk you through figuring out if that might be a problem that could be thickening up your bile. Cause number 8 is high insulin or taking statins. And I'm certainly not telling you to stop taking a statin if you're taking one. That's not my place. But statins work by turning off the liver's ability to make more cholesterol. So then that cholesterol number goes down. Just yay, I won my test. My cholesterol number went down. What a good thing. So that's what statins do. But the statin is reducing that cholesterol, and cholesterol is needed to make bile. So this can restrict a body from making enough bile, and then if bile is not being produced enough, it's going to stagnate and thicken up. And high insulin seems to have the ability to thicken up bile as well. So if you think you might be leaning on that insulin resistance side, then that's going to cause the body to make more insulin, and insulin levels will be higher. So check out our video on why we become insulin resistant so you can make sure you're not making those mistakes. And cause number 9 is someone not drinking enough water. Water is really needed in the body. It helps everything kind of flow. It helps it all move, and a lot of people are not drinking enough water. Now, that doesn't mean everybody needs to start downing a gallon of water. If you looked at your blood pressure like we talked about earlier and that systolic number was below 112, you don't want to drink pounds and pounds of water because that's going to wash away the small amount of mineral you have. But if your blood pressure is in an okay range, it might be worth increasing your water intake if you appear to be dealing with bile sludge issues. And the last cause of bile or biliary sludge is a person not producing enough bile. And this is a lot more rare. Most people are making enough bile, it just becomes too thick and sticky and then it doesn't flow correctly. But if someone isn't making enough bile, maybe they're having a lot of liver issues and the liver can't do all the jobs it's supposed to do, then they could supplement with ox bile, and supplementing with ox bile can stimulate the body to make more bile. Just understand that supplementing with ox bile or TUDCA, like a lot of people do, doesn't really do anything to thin the bile out. It just kind of replaces the bile for that meal. It's even taking a different pathway by going through your stomach. So it's not going to thin it out, but it could help a person produce more bile if they're not producing bile. But for most people, the steps they need to take when they're having these issues is they need to thin the bile out so then it can flow correctly, and then the natural bile function can work the way that it's supposed to function. So what I want you to do right now is jump over and watch our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow so you can get those things in motion, and as you remove these mistakes, you can do other things to thin it out and get it flowing even faster. I can't wait to hear about your results.